WNST and search more and expand more beyond the sports conversation. We are going to be having a series of musical conversations with musical heroes of mine, bands coming to town, and of course our partnership with the Modell Lyr. This band's coming in the night of the NFL draft on Thursday night. Of course, you can follow the draft along with us on our Coons for WNST text service and head down to the Modell Lyr and hear the beautiful music of Pink Floyd that I enjoy so much. The band is Brit Floyd, tribute band coming to town here. Not the first go-round here at the Modell Lyr, and certainly touring the entire country right now. Joining us, band leader and a fellow Pink Floyd aficionado, no doubt, from the band Brit Floyd. We welcome Damian Darlington onto the program, out on tour and doing the music of Pink Floyd every single night. But you've been doing this a long time, right, Damian?
Yes, certainly. I've over 24 years now of playing Pink Floyd music professionally, and for the last 7 years with Brit Floyd.
Well, I know you have been in other tribute outfits, and we have one of those here in Maryland, a band called Several Species. They play only a handful of shows every year. A few of the guys follow me on Facebook, and we come down, and several thousand people will come down, and they have a gong, and they have a light show, and they do it up pretty well locally. But doing this thing on the road every night, and I think the music of Pink Floyd has aged so incredibly well. I think you know this, performing this every night and in sort of the environment that you do it. And it's such an artistic endeavor, right? I flew down to Miami last summer to see Roger Waters do the music, and the Trump is a pig floating through the crowd in an arena setting, but doing it in a theater, doing it outdoors, doing it indoors. And I think there's an interpretation of all the Pink Floyd music through the years that I'm sure it's even grown for you. It sounds the same every night, but it's never the same every night, is it?
No, definitely not. As I mentioned, I've been doing this for a long, long time. I've played thousands of shows now. But what keeps it interesting, what keeps it inspiring, for myself and the other guys in the band is the audience that in front of us, how they're feeding off our performance. How they're inspiring us to play this music. Better than we to try and play it as best we possibly can, so that's what sort of keeps it interesting and varied for ourselves, the audiences we get to play in front of.
I'm fascinated because I go to see lots of tribute bands. I'm a guy that frequented Vegas 25 years ago for tribute bands and Elvis tributes and that sort of thing. But in the modern era where we lose a Tom Petty, we lose a Prince, there is no Led Zeppelin, I see the guys who get the lead out every year when they come through. And there really is a calling for doing this on an incredibly high level to get people out to enjoy the music at a reasonable price often and to make a living doing it in a touring environment, not as a Vegas house band or a one-shot deal where you do a few shows here and again, as more of a cover band, but as a true touring band. That this needs to be done at an incredibly high level, but I think it speaks to your band as well as the timeless music of Pink Floyd and the draw of it all, because there aren't a whole lot of musical compositions where this can be done by a touring operation around the world the way you've done with Brit Floyd.
It's true, there's not many sort of bands that produced music like Pink Floyd did that you can sort of imagine having the appeal, and enabling you to sort of play their music on the scale that we do. We literally, we play ice hockey arenas, we play large theatres, we play all sorts of shapes and sizes of venues, excuse me, all over the world, and, to as many as 10,000 people. So it just shows that, one, the music justifies being played in those sorts of environments, and two, that there is such a huge demand to experience this music live still out there.
Could you have imagined that the first time that you got together with a couple of guys and jammed some Pink Floyd and played The Wall or Dark Side or whatever, that this could be a vocation, not just, I'm in a band and I love the music and, I'm playing it? I mean, at what point does that jump from being, wow, I can really get, on airplanes and do this all over the world, just like Pink Floyd does, maybe on a little bit of a smaller level, though?
When I started doing this 24 years ago, I didn't really have a notion it could get as big as it has done. When I started doing this, tribute bands as a thing were very, very new. I'd only just sort of heard of the sort of notion that there were things such as tribute bands myself back then. So I didn't have any, I didn't have any idea it would get as big as it has done, and it would take me to all these amazing places around the world in the process.
What introduced you to Pink Floyd? I'm sure you've heard that question before. I mean, I would think the first time I heard of Pink Floyd was in 1979 at Holabird Junior High School. The Wall had just come out. Another Brick in the Wall was there. And, MTV wasn't born yet, but the movie, the Friday night, midnight showings of The Wall, and there was some mystique to it. And I guess all of these years later, last year I flew to Miami to see Roger Waters. He played locally here. But I wanted to see the show and I wanted to be a part of it. But I also did something really special. I was in London when the Ravens played at Wembley in the third week of September, and it was literally the last week of the display over in this incredible art house that thousands of people have gone to this Pink Floyd exhibition, Their Mortal Remains. It's moving to Rome this year. It's really incredible how the art on top of the music and the concerts, and I think people my age, and I'm 50, remember Floyd touring stadiums with quadraphonic sound and sound everywhere and the cash register and money going off and all of that. But there's a whole artistic side of this and a political side of this and a geopolitical side of this that I really learned through the exhibition because I wasn't someone so tied to the band more than just knowing the songs on classic rock radio, you know?
Yes, certainly. The Pink Floyd had a huge amount to say in their lyrics. They were very, very intelligent, very thought-provoking lyrics and concepts, that were tied to their albums, and they're still relevant today. The things that they were exploring in albums such as Dark Side of the Moon. When it comes to myself personally, what drew me to Pink Floyd was pretty much, it sounds similar to yourself. It was The Wall. I was 10 years old when the single first came out, Another Brick in the Wall, a very unlikely Christmas #1 in the UK. But then a couple of years later, when I was in my early teens, I discovered the Wall album. A friend had it. I got to listen to it all the way through, and that's what drew me into being a fan of Pink Floyd music. So they've been there with me, from the very early age as one of my favourite bands. The Victorian Albert Museum exhibition you went to see, sadly I didn't get a chance to see it, but maybe I'll get a chance to see it in Rome later this year myself when I'm not on tour.
Now that is your side of the water, right? So Liverpool is home for you, is that correct?
That's the sort of the business base of the band. That's where our management is based, and we rehearse there. I live in the UK, not too far away from Liverpool. About 40 miles away from there. So I spend a lot of time in Liverpool. Which is obviously famous for a particularly iconic band. I'm sure we know.
There was a little cavern club there, from what I understand. Damian Darlington is our guest. He is with Brit Floyd. Tell everybody about the experience, what they're going to see at the Modell Lyr on the 26th Force. Other than just the music of Pink Floyd that we know about, but a touring troupe coming through doing this at an incredibly high level that many of these people have experienced, the Roger Waters or a Gilmore or a DVD or the Wall tour even 40 years ago. That it is really a night, I think, if you love Pink Floyd, to come out and celebrate. The ticket price isn't too outrageous. It's you guys keep it affordable. But more than that, the light show and the experience of bringing this to the kind of theater that the Modell Lyr, 2,500, 3,000 seat theater, that there is some intimacy, but also the sounds and the visual that you bring.
It's a big touring production. We have a very substantial light show. We have the circular screen. We have video that's accompanying the music all the way through the show. There are lasers. If the venue is big enough and we can fit it in, we have the large inflatable pig that makes an appearance as part of the show. So it's everything you would have expected to see back in the day when you went to see Pink Floyd, and we're trying to recreate that experience in as much detail and in every way we possibly can. So it's a very substantial production people will get to see.
Damian, I go back to the exhibition, and certainly for a guy like you that has done this professionally for half of my life and half of your life, it sounds like, because it sounds like we're kindred spirits in an age standpoint. I really was blown away by the exhibition. I went with a dear friend of mine, actually, who the Modell's named after his father. I went with John Modell, who's one of the owners of the football team, who's also a musician and a guy who loved music, and we sort of did it on a lark the night before the game, and and we found ourselves for hours sort of mesmerized by it. But more than that, I walked into there sort of blind. Like I really only knew the music. I didn't know all of the crazy promotional things that they did and the mystique that led into that. And I would even put it to you that I didn't live through that period of time in the 70s where I was the hippie teenager at that point, experiencing all that, only reading about it later. And I never read about it later. I mean, I was 48 years old last year and learned so many things in that 3-hour journey because I had never watched a rock doc on Pink Floyd or sort of Wikipedia'd them or, read into their history or got a book or anything like that. But I think that part of the mystique is getting sucked into that because I found myself in London being in the minority around me, even as I walked the museum, which was packed. I mean, it was they oversold it. There were too many people in there, quite frankly, and it was such a large, long exhibit with long movies and long tributes and stories and never seen before clips that I was learning things. But people in there, they were like, "Oh yeah, I remember the time. I remember when I was young." And most of these people are a little older than me, but they had a real experience with the band that I did not have with Led Zeppelin, that maybe I had more with Michael Jackson or Prince or Guns N' Roses or the things that MTV, things that happened on my watch. Like the Beatles didn't happen on either of our watches. It's all sort of black and white video. I think that really colors the music even more, Damian, where I want to come and see you play on Thursday night, the 26th, because of what I saw along the way, that you learn more about bands. And I think that's part of the Hall of Fames and part of the rock documentaries and all of that that's left now that I'm never going to get to go to a Tom Petty concert again. You know what I mean?
Yes, certainly. The mythologies and the mystiques that sort of are built up around these bands. That it's all part and parcel of what makes you sort of them so compelling and turns people into such lifelong fans of the music. And it's sort of my job to know a lot of the background of Pink Floyd, doing
Sure.
what I do. So, I wasn't, like yourself, I wasn't sort of old enough in the 70s when they're in their real sort of heyday to experience it firsthand. But, I've had to read the biographies and watch the documentaries, so I can understand this band, over and above just simply playing the music. And, I think that's important and, perhaps helps me in when it comes to the job of recreating the show that we do, recreating it so accurately.
Well, and I think that would be true for any of these legendary bands, right? Like Springsteen kind of came along and Born in the USA when I was old enough, but not so much for Born to Run. Same thing with the Rolling Stones with, Sticky Fingers, not so much, but Tattoo You I kind of caught on, and then I became a fan, and you take this music with you for life, literally. And what else do you listen to? I mean, as a kid growing up on the other side of the water who literally is my age and has dedicated your life to Pink Floyd, I'm assuming you're a Zeppelin fan and a Stones fan and a Who fan and like all of that as well, right?
Of course, I'm into the whole raft of classic rock bands, alongside Pink Floyd, but also, a lot of the progressive rock end of things as well. Bands like Yes and King Crimson and Genesis and Rush. I was a very, very big fan of Rush as well. But I also
knew I liked you.
I also listened to a lot of fusion music. I was into guitar players like Al Di Meola and John McLaughlin and Pat Metheny and people like that alongside that music. So it was pretty varied what I was listening to when I was becoming formed as a musician, as it were.
Well, it's fascinating. A buddy of mine's in an AC/DC tribute band out on the West Coast as well, and they play big festivals. And on the West Coast, the tribute band circuit in America is growing larger, and the circuit's growing larger, I think, for all sorts of bands. Tom Petty has a lot of tribute bands now, and, obviously with his, tragic passing, that's happening. But, Petty is derived from things. Most things are derived from the Beatles or the Stones or Elvis, and Elvis was derived from, obviously, black and gospel music and Delta Blues and all of that. But Pink Floyd, Rush, there are certain sort of art prog bands that really don't sound like anything else, and nothing's really come along so much that wants to sound like them, I mean, I can listen to a Black Crowes and I can hear Rod Stewart and the Faces and the Stones and that, but with Floyd and with Rush, there are a couple of these sort of mystical bands that they are their own genre in some way, even though they fit nicely into the classic rock radio catalog in America, right?
I mean, certainly, the Pink Floyd were a unique band, very, very creative. They came up with a lot of stuff, first, quite frankly, a lot of what they were doing you just hadn't heard before. I mean, but fundamentally at heart, you take David Gilmour, for example. He's a blues guitar player. That's what he fundamentally is, but he wasn't afraid to experiment and dress up his sound with all the latest effects that were becoming available at the time, and creating all these amazing soundscapes as a result. But first and foremost, he's a blues guitar player. But when it comes to what's happened since, after bands like Pink Floyd and Rush, but you can hear. There are bands out there that have been inspired by them. Radiohead, for example, I would say is a band that you can hear echoes of Pink Floyd in. And when you take a band like the Foo Fighters or something like that, you can hear Rush coming out at times in a band like that. So
sometimes they even wear the kimonos, right, Damian?
Sorry, say that again.
Sometimes they even wear the kimonos, the Foo Fighters, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, the 2112 kimonos.
Damian Darlington is here. He's from Brit Floyd. They're at the Modell Lyr doing the music of Pink Floyd. If you love the music of Pink Floyd, this is an incredible undertaking. A quarter of a century, Damian's been doing that. First with an Australian outfit. Not even first. I mean, I'm sure there were many more that came along. But, to do this at this level and to be touring, I sort of in the modern era, and to know backgrounds and having books read. We talk about Rush and the fundamental fabric of that band, those three guys, and U2's back on the road. And then, one of my buddies, Steve Gorman's a drummer in the Black Crowes. Those guys can't get along. Oasis, those guys don't get along. The Pink Floyd guys, I think for anyone who's a fan of the band, and obviously the tragedies and the things that went on many, many years ago, at the foundation of the band with Sid and whatnot. But when band members don't get along, for a guy like you who's an adult and in a band right now, you get to pick your bandmates. They pick each other. You travel the world. It's really fundamental to like each other, isn't it? I mean, it's an incredible thing when bands can't get along and don't go out, or do get along, even in the case of Led Zeppelin, and just don't want to do it, or one of the members doesn't want to do it. But I think there's a mix of tragedy for the fans, and also as you get older, understanding like, all right, so Plant just doesn't want to get on an airplane and run around the stadiums and sing All Out of Love anymore. He wants to go out and play little things and play in this other band. And as an artist, as I get older, I have an incredible appreciation for that. But I think it is a shame when the guys and the founding members of these bands can't get along. I understand it, but it's heartbreak, I think, for everyone who loves their music and wants sort of that happy ending, that Rush story or that U2 story where they never step on stage without each other,
There's a lot of something to be said for sort of creative tension. You get your Lennon-McCartney relationships, your Waters-Gilmour relationships. They can produce, sometimes can be the catalyst for producing a band's best work.
Or Mick and Keith. Let's put them in there too.
Maybe. But I mean, as fans, obviously, we don't want to know about that. We just want, our favourite band to still be going out there and doing it and entertaining us. So, but that's the way it is. Not everybody gets on. You can't force people to work together if they don't want to do so anymore, just to entertain you, as it were.
All right, what's your favorite Pink Floyd song today? I mean, does it? And it changes, right? All the time, right?
It probably, to a certain extent, it changes from tour to tour, because we switch up our set list every year as much as we can. So there are always new tracks coming along that are my favourite to perform. I suppose, performing it and listening to it are two different things. But you can never sort of get tired of playing a track like Comfortably Numb, for example, when you get to sing, as I do, the Gilmour vocal part, and I get to do the classic guitar solo, one of the greatest rock guitar solos of all time. I'm lucky enough to play it night after night, so something like that never gets old for me. But I love tracks from Animals, like performing a track such as Dogs, or as a singer singing a song like Us and Them from Dark Side of the Moon. These are the sort of highlights for me as a musician playing this music.
Did you get a chance to see Waters last year?
No, I haven't had a chance to see this tour yet. The last time I got to see Roger Waters was when he was touring The Wall back in 2011, I think it was. There's a slim chance I might get to see it when he's in Europe this summer, but we'll see. I'm just always so busy touring myself that I miss out on a lot of these concerts these days.
When you go and see them do the music, is there anything there for you to take? I mean, is it something really inspiring knowing that they've given you an opportunity to go make a living doing this music you love?
Well, certainly, you got to be thankful to the guys, for creating what they did in the first place and giving me the opportunity to go out and do the sort of thing I do as a professional musician. And when it comes to seeing the shows, we're always looking at the way that they present the shows, looking for ideas of how we can improve what we do, get inspiration from, the production techniques that they're using these days. So it's always fascinating to go and see the original guys still out there doing this music.
How many band members? You bring a big troupe, right?
Yeah, it's a 9-piece band on stage. It's very much sort of like the Pulse era Pink Floyd sort of lineup thing going on.
Well, hey, really appreciate your time. Good luck to you. Happy travels and good journeys. We'll see you down at the Modell Lyr on the 26th. I've enjoyed talking some music with you, Damian. Thanks for the time.
Okay, thanks. Nice talking to you, too.
You got it. Damian Darlington from Brit Floyd. They're doing the music of Pink Floyd down at the Modell Lyr on the 26th. Come downtown. Light City was unbelievable on the first weekend. I know we've got a little lead up here to the NFL draft. That is draft night down at the Modell Lyr on the 26th. You can keep the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault with you 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox free each and every morning. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. And don't forget the Maryland Jockey Club entries now in the morning newspaper each and every morning, as well as on the front of WNST.net. I'm drinking out of my Pizza John's cup here. I went and got me a... we're calling it the Jen and Ness special right now, or the green and white, because she likes onion on her half. I like green pepper on my half. We keep the meat sauce off, but you can call it the works. Pizza John's, they've been doing it for 50 years on Back River Neck Road. Get down and see them. We're going to watch a Caps game there, watch the Orioles. I watched the Orioles on Saturday. Wish I didn't when Cobb was giving up home runs in the first inning. But, I did that over the weekend. So Pizza John's down in Essex. Go see them. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube, WNSTV channel, mixing a little rock and roll music in with our sports. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.